Further, the Chazon Ish says that some people are not going to have behavior traits that are quite as noticeable as these. They're still going to be lowlives, and in fact, even bigger lowlives. But their behavior traits are not going to be noticeable. You're not going to see this guy eating in the middle of the park or on a bench outside of the office. You're not going to see this guy zooming through the streets with his brand new BMW or some other Ford GT car. You're not going to see him doing that. You're going to see this guy look perhaps even better than everybody else at times. But yet, the Torah defines this person as a lowlife. How could it be? He says that their expressions are going to be very different. Such a way where they're going to have coarse expressions and low language. Meaning that this guy could be a person that presents themselves as if they're a righteous person, presents themselves as if they're a humble person, presents themselves as if they're even a holy person. You know, they carry themselves, it's the type of people, they put their head down, and they speak really low, and sometimes when you talk to them, they make pretend as if it's too loud, and it's hard for them to accept what's going on around. But in reality, the moment you cross that person, the moment you say something that rubs this person the wrong way, by not giving them enough honor, by not giving them the something that they believe you need to give them, immediately things change. And unfortunately, this is most common in the religious world. Certainly it's common elsewhere, but it's most noticeable in the religious world, where people identify that their religious leader, whether Jew or otherwise, is a fake. Is simply a fake. Now, in the Jewish world, unfortunately, I've had the experience of finding quite a few of these lowlives before I became religious many years ago, or even after, where they would present themselves a certain way. They would literally present themselves as if they are glued to the Torah, as if they care about Jewish people, they care about the Torah, but the moment the money stopped coming in, the moment that you simply didn't answer them the way they wanted you to answer them, all of a sudden their face changes, and sometimes even worse than you could possibly imagine. I remember there was a guy that presented himself as a rabbi, from France, who used to come to my office every week. Now this guy didn't make a difference whether I told him to come or not to come. He would simply come to the office and just sit in my office until I gave him money. He simply would not leave. Now, he always presented himself as he cared, as he loved us, as everything was good, and so on. But once my life turned upside down, I had medical problems, I had to go to the hospital, and everything went haywire, this guy stopped coming. This guy stopped caring. This guy, all of a sudden, he was on to the next customer. Now, when one of my family members approached him and said, "Listen, you've been coming to my son for years. Why don't you tell him something? Give him some chizuk, give him some hope, something." "Oh, that's not my job. That's not my job," he says. Meaning, well, my mom told him, "What is your job? To collect money?" He goes, "Yeah." And he had no qualms about actually saying this. Now, he was at such a low life level, he didn't even think twice about responding in such a way. Now, if that was it, I wouldn't even say the story, but it wasn't. Years passed, and Baruch Hashem, life got better, became very religious, started speaking and teaching the public, started helping people that were in similar situations that I was. And one day I did a lecture that exposed the falsehood that's in the wig business, where many people think that wigs are a kosher way to cover their hair in the Jewish religion, but they're not realizing that the wigs of today are not the wigs that the rabbis permitted a few hundred years ago. The wigs of today are wigs that no rabbi could possibly permit had they known where they're actually sourced from. In the previous generations, the wigs came from, either it was straw, or it was animal hair, it was all types of other things that came. But today, the wigs are coming from people, but not just regular people, they're coming from India, which is part of their religion, is to donate their hair to their idols, meaning that the wigs of today, and by wigs I literally mean over 95% of the real hair wigs and hair extensions in the world today are sourced from idol worship. Now, this is not a theory, this is a fact. We've researched, we've identified, we even have people go and live in India to identify and interview people. It's simply at this point, it's after many years of research, it's conclusive that if you have a real hair wig on your head, you have idol worship on your head. You have something that came from idolatry, which is forbidden for all Jews. It's actually forbidden for non-Jews too, but even more forbidden for all Jews. Now, the problem is that many people don't want to accept this. Why? Because that means that they have to cover their hair with a hat or a scarf, which they don't want for different reasons. So when we came out with this, this is probably 6-7 years ago, for the first time, or even longer, for the first time, Baruch Hashem, it created all types of, comments and so on. And one of the people that commented in a very negative way was this so-called rabbi telling me that, I don't know what I'm talking about, and I was, I'm wrong for what I'm doing. And I told him that, I have evidence. I mean, you don't want to listen to it, you don't want to acknowledge it, fine, but you can't say it's fake. He said to me something that I couldn't believe. He said to me, you were better off before you did tshuva. The biggest mistake you ever made was doing tshuva and becoming religious. And I said to him, are you kidding me? What do you mean? I used to violate Shabbat. I used to, not observe Torah. Why would observing Torah be a bad thing? Because, you were much nicer back then. You were much nicer. I said, but the only thing I was doing was just giving money. I was gonna go to Gehenom. Because this generation, the only thing you need to do is to give tzedakah, to give charity. That's the only mitzvah that you have to do. Now, obviously, this guy has become such a lowlife that he has changed Judaism into a business. Into a business where he literally says, and he believes, that the only thing you need to do is to collect money from people. Now, of course, I'm not really sure if he himself observes the Torah, observes Shabbat, eats kosher, or does any of the things he presents himself to be doing. But this was one of my experiences, my personal experiences with a real lowlife that I viewed as a righteous person for years. Now, this, of course, is not only something you find in Judaism. I don't need to give you a list of all the lowlives that you find in Christianity, in Islam, and all the other places out there. The list will start and the world will end before that list ends. So the reality is that lowlives appear in all shapes and colors. But one of the things we have to understand is that this lowlife is not necessarily going to be so obvious to everybody. The lowlife is going to sometimes present himself as someone that looks and acts as if they are a holy person, a good person, an honest person. And it's only after we spend some time and put some attention to the matter to really identify whether this person is really truly a lowlife or not. Now, one of the things that you'll see these people do, as the Chazon Ish says, is you'll see these people make coarse expressions and low language, or being quick to curse or berate people. What does that mean? Simple. This guy could have been a friend of yours, could have been your rabbi, could have been some type of motivator, some type of spiritual leader, some type of coach, or whatever you want to call them. But you see these people speaking like, what people like to say, they speak like truck drivers. They curse, they have disgusting language, they have potty mouth, they have simply foul language, they insult other people for unwarranted reasons. We're not talking about someone that's an enemy of God, and therefore it's a mitzvah to actually insult such a person and make fun of such a person. Someone's an idol worshiper. It's idolatry in general. It's a mitzvah to insult such a thing simply because these are enemies of God. These are enemies of your Father in heaven. But I'm talking about simply a person decides that this guy that's in front of him or somewhere else, since he is not accepting of their opinion, since he is of a different tradition, since he has a different way to look at things. Therefore, he's a loser. He's a this. He's a that. Or perhaps a person that doesn't want to support their cause. They start cursing them and saying their children are going to be such and such, and their wife is going to be such and such. Now, obviously, if you were ever a witness to such a thing, then the first thing you should have done is run away from that person. Why? Because at that moment, Hashem gave you a get out of jail free card. He gave you a free ticket to simply get out by showing you clearly that this leader that you have is not who he presents himself to be. Is not this holy person. Why? Because this holy person could have never said such things. Now, this is sometimes something that you will see in at work, in business, where a person will present themselves as if they care about the customer. Oh yeah, the customer is always right. I love my customers. I love the workers. But the moment somebody crosses them, the moment somebody doesn't pay on time, or the moment somebody leaves them and doesn't want to do business with them for whatever reason, all of a sudden you see these people come out with and start insulting and cursing and yelling and acting literally like beasts. Now, this is not something that is new. This is something that was always there in that low-life person. Only that this is the time that he expresses that lowliness. So, that type of behavior can sometimes be in ourselves. Sometimes a person could get so upset at something that they could actually start acting no different than the person I just described. Hence the reason why this low life can sometimes be a character trait that a person himself has to work on. It's not always the person that's next to you, that's in your life, that we have to look at. It's also sometimes it's ourselves. So each person has to listen to this and say, wait, did I ever do that? Did I ever act that way? One of the most common ways that that such a thing happen is when a person has an argument with somebody that's really important to them, their spouse, their partner in business, people that usually you spend the most amount of time with, and that are usually the most comfortable with, tend to be the ones that unfortunately get the all aspects of you, all of the negative and the positives of you. So many times the wife of a person or the husband of a person is going to hear who she really is or who he really is. So she may present herself as the community tzadikah, the righteous woman. Everyone is welcome. She always wants to have guests. She's always smiling. She's always welcoming. But everyone notices that her husband never smiles. And they figure, you know what, it's probably his personality. He's probably just, that's his personality. He's probably doesn't feel good. The reality is that he may be miserable because of his wife. She is happy, but she's happy on his account. All of these guests don't realize that he has to work 2 jobs just to afford all these guests. But she doesn't care because it's important for her to look as if everything is doing so well that she could host as many guests as possible. Or it could be like one of these situations where she's nice to everybody else except her husband. She's nice to everybody else except her kids. Or it could be obviously the opposite, where the guy could be the gracious hosts everybody, but his wife, he won't even give her a few $100s for shopping. Why? No, you should be happy with what you have. But I don't have enough. Well, you should be happy with it. Everyone else, including himself, he's large with, he's generous with. Himself, no problem to spend money. But his wife, sometimes there's these low lives that treat their wives like they're maidservants, like they're cleaning ladies. They don't want to give them an allowance. They don't want to give them anything. And it's obviously a very, very horrible thing that a person can do, not only to their marriage, but just simply to their life. So the public views this person as, oh, wow, he's so generous. He invites everybody. He has all these parties. He's such a nice guy. And then everyone is surprised that he got divorced. And they usually blame the other person. Why? Because from their perspective, he was a really good guy, he's a really generous guy, so they assume that the other person did wrong. This is the reason why it's always a bad idea. It's always a bad idea to get involved in a marriage of people without actually knowing both sides. Without knowing both sides, you're guaranteed to have the wrong assessment, because each person has their own version of the story, and then there's the real truth. So there's his version, there's her version, and there's the actual truth. So if you only hear his version, or you only hear her version, you're guaranteed to hear falsehood. And if you're going to allow yourself to believe that falsehood, not only are you falling for a lie, but you're actually making a sin. You're actually making a sin, which is called Lashon Hara. So, and Rechilut it could be as well. So, a person that presents themselves as if they are a leader, especially in the spiritual world and in the world of religion, can sometimes be the biggest lowlife. How do you know? How do you know if they're a lowlife or not? Simple. What do they spend their time doing? Aside from when they see you and they say hello and they meet and greet, what else do they spend their time doing? What else do they talk about?